Voices from the Mausoleum is brought to you by the You Run Podcast Network and yourunpodcast.com. And a very special thank you to our Patreon subscribers. Hello and welcome back to Found Footage Fridays. Steve flying solo here today with you. Talking about Chronicle, a little movie I like to call Carrie meets Power Rangers. This is probably one of my favorite found footage films. I know it kind of doesn't fit horror per se, but it's very rare that we get a found footage film that's not a horror movie, but still fits the topic. So I'm excited to talk about it. This, like I said, is very Power Rangers meets Carrie. We have Dane DeHaan sort of at the beginning of his career before really taking off. I know he's done stuff before this, but this was the first time I really noticed him. I think this was a little bit before Amazing Spider-Man. I think this was a couple years before. We got Alex Russell, and we have Michael B. Jordan. And so, following three friends who discover sort of this like underground, and this is where I kind of make the Power Rangers comparison. It reminds me of actually the 2017 Power Rangers reboot, the way they discover their powers. And the way they incorporate the found footage element is really cool. As they're sort of discovering their new powers, Dane DeHaan's character, Andrew, he's sort of documenting the abuse that he's experiencing at home from his father. And he starts to kind of document his day to day as well, going to school and kind of experiencing the bullying. But yeah, the way that they utilize him sort of training to levitate the camera, it kind of eliminates that sort of why would they have a camera with them sort of question problem that we see in a lot of found footage films. But I think it works really cool here. And it really allows for some cool cinematography and camera placement choices throughout, especially sort of as he's training, and you can kind of see like the camera spinning around him. You kind of get these kind of classic not really a dolly shot, but rotating shot, 360. I don't know what you would call it, but and then the relationship too, right? Because you have Dane DeHaan's character Andrew is cousins with Matt, so you have like this really interesting family dynamic here, where Matt wants to do what's best for Andrew and be there for him, but then sort of things take a dark turn. Then you sort of have Steve, which is Michael B. Jordan's character. Unfortunately, I think he sort of kind of gets the short end of the stick in this film. But I like his performance, which I think holds up. And definitely, I think makes up for some of the lack of follow through on the character, because his arc kind of sort of just ends abruptly. But all I like to say, so I don't want to get into too many spoilers before really giving this a deep dive. So I'm going to go ahead and give this film an 8.5 out of 10 tapes. This is a solid. I mean, even though it's not classically horror, as far as found footage goes, it's so up there for me. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to put up a little bit of a spoiler banner. So this is sort of where the Carrie piece comes in. We're really seeing this like villain origin story, which very Brightburn. If you've seen that movie, I actually really like that movie. This is very much a found footage version of Brightburn. Definitely cautionary tale with like the bullying, and it's a little bit of a cliche, right? I think with a villain origin story to be sort of rooted in trauma and abuse, but it gets a pass in a little bit because it's more of a supervillain origin story versus something like Halloween, where you don't really want to have too much of an over-explained Michael Myers, right? You sort of want it grounded in some human storytelling. And and then there's like this really sort of sweet side, as before we kind of know things spiral with Andrew. um, where he's sort of making friends. He's using his powers to like be really cool at like a talent show. So there's like these really sweet moments and really kind of cool use of the powers and yeah. And then so the action too. I think the CGI generally holds up. This is a higher budget found footage film than we normally get, similar to Cloverfield. So I think the special effects definitely um, pay off. And I think yeah, and I mean it really leads to some really cool set pieces. I believe this takes place in Seattle. Yeah, Seattle. The poster's got the tower, the needle point tower. I actually don't know what it's officially called, the needle, right? I think. But yeah, no, I think it's such a yeah, it's such a cool film. I am disappointed we never got the sequel that we were supposed to get. Uh, Rumored that they're gonna maybe touch this franchise again. I think the director Josh Trank, I think said he didn't want a sequel, which is kind of a bummer because I think there could totally be um it's a grounded superhero story, but not cynical the way that like The Boys is. It's really grounded, very human. Yeah, yeah, just sort of like a heart, sort of a heart wrenching story. And yeah, yeah, the performances too, man. Dane DeHaan, he's really um, I don't think he's ever been nominated for anything that I can think of, but he's such a good actor, man. Oof, his Andrew is just incredible. Um, Other shout outs. So Max Landis is also a writer in this. So Max Landis, I remember seeing him. I don't think he talked about Chronicle at the convention. I saw him at Comic Con. It was like this limited show. They only really ran 2 seasons called Dark Gentlys, Holistic Detective Agency. So I saw him for the panel for that. But man, yeah, that one, he's a good writer too. So I think he could totally like nail a sequel. I think there was rumors that there was going to be like a female-led spin-off or sequel that was in the works. It would be cool. I think it would be cool. And I think there's definitely room for some horror in this franchise if they go for it. I mean, like the horror is very human here, right? Sort of like the horror of bullying, the horror of abuse, grief and loss. So very like emotional, more psychological than anything. But yeah, yeah, no, I mean, I think especially if we get into some like alien tech and stuff like because we don't really know where the powers came from, and maybe you want to explain it, maybe you don't. But the idea of like their powers sort of because they would get like the nosebleeds and they would like, they'd have to like strengthen the muscle as they talked about. I would love to see sort of a, you don't have to go full body horror, but really sort of see the dark side of like the using these powers. Um, yeah, lot of good metaphors they could play with there. But yeah, Chronicle. I mean, so this came out what in 2012. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. It's totally worth it. Um, yeah, like I said, it's in the sci-fi horror fantasy realm. We call it genre work, right? And they should add genre to the Oscars. I think they're adding no, they're not. But I just saw recently in the Golden Globes that they were going to nominate something crazy for like comedy musical, like a horror or something. Maybe it's Long Legs. I don't know, but like not a comedy, not a musical, right? But just there's no place for genre in the awards, and there needs to be. There needs to be. But yeah, let us know what you think of Chronicle. Is this something you caught back in 2012? Uh, would you want to see a sequel? Would you want to see more in this world? Let us know. And we will catch you next week for another episode of Found Footage Friday.